Ready to make a real impact every day? Join the Active Day Home Care team and help clients maintain their independence in the comfort of their own homes. Make a difference in someone's life as you provide essential daily assistance and protect their health and happiness. Earn up to $20 an hour and enjoy additional perks like optional daily pay, 401k, paid time off, ongoing educational training, and more. Join a team that values care, compassion, and your professional growth. Visit activeday.com to apply.
It's the end of the month, which means it is time for another volume of the Cinema Chronicles right here on Nashville Movie Dispatch. I am your host, Sir Brandon Vick, member of the Southeastern Film Critics Association and a board member of the Music City Film Critics Association, and of course the resident film critic of right here on Nashville Movie Dispatch. Boy, June flew by, and it's hot as the dickens. I'm sure everybody's probably now has at least had to mow their grass like 5 times. It's miserable. If you've listened to probably, I don't know how many podcasts I've talked about how I hate mowing the grass. And this last time, I actually got blisters on my hands. So I'm quite furious right now about it. But I digress. Let's talk about, I got 3 good movies for you on this volume, and they're all very different. I always try to do that with every month. I don't like to do just one genre or anything like that. I try to mix it up for you guys. But I gotta say, I as of last year, and I think anybody who knows us knows that as far as just the Sobros in general, we tend to enjoy physical media. I enjoy physical media in all aspects. I like to have a book in my hand. I like to have a CD to put in my CD player. And yes, my car still does have a CD player. And of course, with movies, DVDs, Blu-rays, and 4Ks, I like them. I'm a bit more strict on what I buy these days than I was, I think, when I was younger. But and then anything I can get in 4K is the preference these days. But that leads me to saying that this past year, so in 2024, there was some of my absolute favorite films came out in 4K, one being Drive, which I think Drive was already in 4K. I'm just not sure if you could buy it in the States. I'm not sure. I know our friend Sean at 615 Film, he got a 4K like a couple years ago of it, but I want to think it was like he had to, it was bought in a different, distributed in a different country. Anyway, they made a beautiful steelbook of Drive. I was able to get that. Another big one on the list was The Departed. That came out in 4K late last year. And then, of course, at the very end of the year, No Country for Old Men joined the Criterion Collection, which ended up being the first 4K. So I have been really pleased with here lately on some of the stuff. And even some of the DVDs I've been trying to at least maybe get Blu-ray copies of. I've done that with quite a few movies, because you don't really know when they're going to be, when they'll be on 4K or if they'll be on 4K. So I know I've been looking to get The Cooler with William H. Macy and Alec Baldwin. And I've been looking to get Chocolat, and I've been looking to get, there's another one. Well, the one I actually, Burn After Reading, I've kind of held back because I just thought a Coen Brothers movie, but that's sort of an underrated one of theirs, but I really enjoy. But I did get one of my favorites of The Informant with Matt Damon. I was able to get the Blu-ray of that, and so this leads me to saying that there is one movie out there that I had the DVD, and I kept hearing for the past couple years that they are going to make the 4K of There Will Be Blood. And I recently searched for it again because I thought, well, maybe I'll get the Blu-ray just until, but then like, okay, well, how much does that cost? Stuff like that. But I went on not quite a Reddit dive, but I did see where basically there's been so many rumors about it and none of them have been true. So I guess that's what I fell victim to, because I held off thinking, oh, okay, it's going to come out this year. It's going to be, I see, it's going to be next year in October. And anyway, none of that's happened. And so I ended up seeing that our friends, Brittany and Jesse at Danger Zone Video, had a Blu-ray copy of it, less than $10. Went down there and picked it up within the day. So I have finally added that to my collection. Again, Blu-ray. I'm still waiting on 4K. I will still get the 4K if or when it comes out. But yes, I'm really looking forward to that one. And now that I think about it, I think There Will Be Blood is the only Paul Thomas Anderson movie I own. I think that's almost, I'm sure that probably surprises some of you out there, and I'm sort of surprised too. But so that's what I'll be on the lookout for. So just remember that day that There Will Be Blood, they finally announced a 4K. Just know that my pants will be at full mass. So, but thanks, Brittany and Jesse at Danger Zone. Lovely copy, less than $10. Fine by me. Perfect. So for all of you out there, buy physical media. We already have seen Target doesn't sell it anymore. Best Buy doesn't sell it anymore. Who knows what Amazon will do, Walmart. Get them while you can. There's still some out there, some Jack Nicholson movies I want on 4K or that need to be on 4K, and I look forward to every month that Criterion collection. Them and A24. Shout out to A24. I love some of them. They're not all 4Ks, but I love how they've done, like with The Brutalist and Heretic, and here recently Friendship has come out. That's one of I know Stoney and I is one of our favorite movies of the year. So yeah, I'm always on the lookout, always on the hunt. So anyway, just buy movies, I guess. So let's get started. And the first one is I'll Be Damned is a female John Wick. I'll talk about it next. Ballerina, or I think it's From the World of John Wick, Ballerina. But let's go to IMDb for the plot real quick, and it's short and sweet. An assassin trained in the traditions of the Roscaroma organization sets out to seek revenge after her father's death. So, if you've seen all the John Wick movies, which you should, then bless you. But this film takes place during John Wick 3. So Ballerina is a John Wick spinoff featuring a badass Ana de Armas, where the fight choreography and stunts are, of course, amazing, and is the mightiest muscle that it flexes. There is, and I've seen this referred to online, grenade foo, and if you've seen this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That sequence is quite astounding, the way that what is pulled off. There's also a scene featuring ice skates, which is pretty damn cool. And I think the one that's kind of been getting the most attention, and we got a glimpse of it in the trailer for Ballerina, is the flamethrowers. All of that stuff is really cool. There are other action sequences that, they're decent, but when you're playing in this John Wick world where the bar has been raised to the heavens, it's pretty tough to impress. I think not having cinematographer Dan Laston is very noticeable. As far as the script and story, it's humdrum and overly familiar. Ballerina is fine with just kind of running around to familiar places, seeing the familiar faces. Narratively speaking, I think the effort sort of stops there. Besides Eve, that's Ana de Armas' character, There are no really new memorable characters. And as far as the villain, which is played by Gabriel Byrne, who's been in a ton of stuff, but I don't know why, but every time, and I think like The Usual Suspects is probably what would come to other people's mind. Mine is Ghost Ship. I don't know why, but I always think of him in Ghost Ship. Anyway, his villain is kind of the same old shtick. So while watching, I sort of wondered about the reboots and kind of where they fit in. There were, not reboots, reshoots that involved, that really kind of these rumors swarmed around Ballerina during the post-production stuff. So the reshoots, I was wondering about those and kind of where they fit in. And some of them I think are pretty noticeable. I think you can kind of see where they kind of went in and put this here and fit that there. And there were talks about all of these reshoots, which for every film where it always stirs up doubts about the quality of it. But apparently these, or so they say, was added not to really, was really more than like to add to it, more than trying to fix something. Via The Hollywood Reporter, Ballerina director Len Wiseman talks scrap John Wick 3 connections and the truth about the additional photography. So in October of 2024, Hollywood Reporter spoke to Helsky. He is the director of all the John Wick movies, for the 10th anniversary of John Wick, before he eventually addressed the online chatter surrounding Ballerina's rumored creative overhaul. The franchise shepherd was well aware and visibly annoyed by the internet's claims that he conducted several months of reshoots, ultimately rejecting such notions by detailing the 2 weeks' worth of additional photography he oversaw with Wiseman. He noted that Wiseman's film did not have anywhere near the time or money of the recent John Wick films, and that he ran out of runway and proper weather to capture the entirety of the script that was written by Shay Hatton. Hatton wrote the original Ballerina script before it was purchased by Lionsgate and actually ended up being kind of retrofitted for the Wick world. So it was kind of its own thing and then became part of the John Wick universe. Wiseman is now raising the same points about the resources, something the studio was willing to furnish upon seeing an early version of Ballerina and knowing that they were on the right track. Understandably, the online narrative bothered the director as well. This is the director, Wiseman. Chad and I were both frustrated about it. It's a really frustrating thing to hear such claims, and it happens more today than it did back in the day. There was additional shooting because the studio loved the movie. We had to take out some scenes from the script originally because we just didn't have the resources or the schedule, so it was an exciting opportunity to go back and just add more to the film. But when the press hears about that and the reports become whatever they are, it always has a negative connotation. One particular sequence that was scripted but never filmed during principal photography due to budget limitations is the extended opening in which Eve, a young Eve, played Victoria Comte, has to bear witness to her father's death at the hands of the Chancellor, that's Gabriel Byrne, and his cult that kind of serves as the collective villain. Essentially, Eve needed her visible source of vengeance, a la a John Wick's murder of John Wick's cherished puppy. He says it was in the script, but we just didn't have the time and the schedule and everything needed to do that, Wiseman says. So that was one of the scenes that we went back to do, and I was absolutely thrilled that the studio was so supportive of us going back to get what we wanted. So it sounds like a lot of stuff they were actually able to kind of add to the story, not so much as trying to cut it, chop it up, and make it worse. Now, with that said, I'm glad Wiseman was able to fill in some more stuff, yet I will say from just the completed film that I saw, I'm not quite sure if it ultimately made a huge difference. I believe Keanu Reeves' stuff was also put in there as well. And listen, I get it. You have a John Wick spinoff, so you got to have John Wick in it. It makes perfect sense. The thought of seeing Reeves back in black, kicking ass, will get fans to the theater all on its own. So, of course, you want to make that, You want to make that connection clear. You want to put that in the trailer. Totally got it. But how do we expect Ballerina, the movie, to separate itself if it can't go out and do its own thing without him? Again, I get the thought process behind it, but it sort of backfires because it reminds us viewers how great the John Wick movies are, and then it only gets us comparing those to Ballerina. And listen, I don't care how tough she is. That's a fight she ain't going to win, folks. Though, one thing is for sure, De Armas is undoubtedly worthy of being a part of the John Wick world. She can take a beating and keep on killing. And for anyone who may have had any kind of reservations about her physical capabilities, they will be put to rest real fast. I saw a tweet by, it looks like it's Kins Vanunu. It's Kinsey XCX. But she said, something I really love about Ballerina movie is the way her fighting style is so tailored to fit her story. As she's desperate for a way into this world we've been watching John Wick fight for a way out of. That nails it pretty good. And that was, and I think having Eve's fighting be tailored to De Armas was certainly intentional and also very well executed. Via IndieWire, again, Len Wiseman talks about how he didn't want to replicate what John Wick did in terms of the fighting style. I wanted Anna to have her own energy and voice. To that end, Wiseman kept a close eye on De Armas' progress while she was training with the 8711 stunt designers who have been a key part of the John Wick franchise since the beginning, which brings attention where there is a documentary that goes in behind all of the physical elements of John Wick. It's called Wick is Pain, and I highly recommend it. It came out, I think maybe last month, but Wick is Pain, I would highly recommend you checking out, especially if you want to see like all the behind the scenes stuff of how like the training and everything. It's incredible. So back to the IndieWire piece, Wiseman says, during rehearsal, I would be planning with my production designer and I'd get updates saying things like, Anna's really good at kicks. So we would build that into her language. During prep, Wiseman began conceptualizing set pieces designed to capitalize on De Armas' strengths and to convey that this is an assassin at a very different stage in her career from John Wick. She's a new assassin, so is so much more of survival action than attack action, Wiseman says. She's jumping into a world where she's up against a lot of very seasoned assassins. Keeping this in mind, Wiseman and the 8711 team went to work on action sequences in which Eve would improvise using anything and everything around her to fight off the onslaught of trained killers. And I think that's kind of where you get the grenade foo and the flamethrowers and the ice skates. So, well done there. Ballerina in the end is explosive, it's brutal, and it's thrilling where it truly counts in this Wild Wick world. But if it wasn't connected to it, then I think Ballerina would be seen as an entertaining, though average, imitation of those John Wick movies. Luckily, it has Wick's approval and adapts precisely what it needs to make Wick proud and his fans happy. Ballerina gets a VIX Flix rating of 3 out of 5. And coming up next, Pixar goes to space. Nice. Pixar's latest is called Elio. And per Rotten Tomatoes, for centuries, people have called out to the universe looking for answers. In Disney and Pixar's all-new feature film, The Universe Calls Back. The cosmic misadventure introduces Elio, a space fanatic with an active imagination and a huge alien obsession. So when he's beamed up to the Communiverse, an interplanetary organization with representatives from galaxies far and wide, he's all in for the epic undertaking. Mistakenly identified as Earth's leader, he must form new bonds with eccentric alien life forms, navigate a crisis of intergalactic proportions, and somehow discover who and where he is truly meant to be. So, I for me, and I'm a huge fan of Pixar, they have created some of the absolute best, phenomenal animated films that have ever been made. This one is I think it's a sweet-natured kind of sci-fi adventure told in Pixar's always alluring animation that's not without its moving moments. However, the story isn't necessarily out of this world either. Besides the familiarity, there's not enough time, I think, invested on Earth. And when the movie goes to space, the film does get imaginative, though it never reaches the status of feeling totally fresh. Many of the side characters are rather forgettable too, but even so, Elio and Glorden make for a dynamic duo who have much more in common than meets the eye. He's one of basically an alien snail that they meet, but anyway, they have a lot of similarity in kind of the I almost said the people that they are, but just that what they've been through. They're a blast, and undoubtedly they represent the huge heart that's needed by directors Adrian Molina, Madeline Sherfian, and Domi Shi to explore the weighty themes that surround the movie that's about loneliness, grief, and the beauty that can be found in each of our uniqueness. Now, you may ask, why did it take 3 directors to make this? Well, this is per Entertainment Weekly. Piece is called How Sci-Fi Classics Alien, The Thing, and Contact, and a director's shakeup shaped Pixar's Elio. When he was first coming up with the story, Adrian talked about the moment where he went to animation college at Cal Arts for the first time and how all of a sudden he felt like he'd found his people. He had found his world. Director Madeline Sharifian tells Entertainment Weekly, that's like Elio's journey from Earth up into the Communiverse, which is this magical space with aliens from everywhere. Molina provided Elio with the same backdrop as his own childhood, a military base. He said there's a really interesting kind of parallel between these two worlds. There's the very structured, controlled place that where Elio feels he's not right. It's not the right world for him, and then this beautiful, organic, colorful space world. Sharifian explains. However, after a couple of years working on the project, Molina ultimately wasn't the one to see it to the finish line, as he was tapped to direct Coco 2 after co-directing the original. So upon his new assignment, he actually handed this off to Domi Shi, who told a similarly personal story in 2022's Turning Red, and Sharifian, a longtime Pixar vet and first-time feature director who helmed one of the Pixar shorts, the 2020s, called Burrow. And they say, we were just on the side, but kind of involved a little bit creatively in the beginning when Adrian was first developing Elio. Then they entrusted Maddie and myself to finish what he started. It was like we were handed a box of toys and we had to figure out how to tell the best story in the most meaningful and entertaining way with them. I was surprised to hear this because of just how personal it was to Molina, but then he was snatched away to do Coco 2 and literally had to leave this with 2 other people. So I think kind of that transition, I would imagine, would have had to be a tough one. But the piece continues where Sharifian explains that Molina had already developed Elio's characters and world by the time she came aboard as directors. It did feel like very big shoes to fill because he had done such a great job of creating these strong, goofy personalities. However, the new directors immediately emphasized with the film's central character. It came from a place that Domi and I both relate to, this feeling of just being a total loner weirdo on this planet. Says, despite joining the project late, the filmmaking duo still injected Elio with their own voices and aesthetics. Sharifian says she felt particularly attached to Elio's aunt and guardian, Olga, which is voiced by the now Academy Award-winning Zoe Saldana. And that she says about this character, she's very control-oriented. Her hair is pulled back tight. Sometimes I'd be watching the movie and be like, oh, dang it, that is me, the director says. She's an uptight perfectionist who wants to raise a kid for the first time but doesn't know how and is sort of dropped into this huge responsibility without knowing what she's doing. There's the thing with Elio is that he had lost his parents, and so now he's with his aunt, and so that's a whole other part where it's addressing grief. Then on the other hand, again, back to Entertainment Weekly, who's a huge fan of sci-fi and horror and Star Trek, feels her voice shining through the film's science fiction and horror elements. She cites 2 Carl Sagan projects, Contact and Cosmos, as key inspirations. She said, we love the idea of space being hopeful and that humanity's answers could be out there somewhere, she says. I just love how in Contact they show aliens in such an aspirational and positive way and not something really scary that's coming to get us or coming to replace us. However, another inspiration of hers was John Carpenter's The Thing, which does build tension from the threat of a shape-shifting alien, replacing some of the characters. We have a B plot that I was really excited we were able to do where we're following Olga. The idea is, what if you slowly realize you're living with a kid who might not be your kid, but if you tell anybody, you might be seen as crazy. And just really having fun with that concept and pushing it to its limits and just having a lot of fun, scaring audiences, but also luring them along for the ride. So I was very fascinated by just how it changed directors, but also the identity of the movie had changed. Now, whether that's for the better, that's up to audiences. But it was funny because I saw a tweet just the other day from Matt at Next Best Picture, and it was Elio's first trailer in 2023, and it looks like a totally different movie than what is the one that ended up coming to theaters. Go look it up when you get a second, and honestly, it makes me wildly curious of if that version, like what if we got that version, what would that have been? If Molina kept going with, I think, what he initially intended, I'm curious what this movie now in 2025, what would it have been? So it's I think one of the best parts of this movie is Elio's arc. He's kind of a grief-stricken, desperate to belong, to realizing that who he's needed has been there this whole time, which is his Aunt Olga. His bond with Glorden is the film's biggest strength. There's no question about that. Like I said up at the top, they're the heart of it. They're also really funny. Glorden gets a lot of good jokes in there. So I really loved that dynamic between those two. There's some wonderful world building with vibrant and colorful animation that feels, warm and weird, and in a good way. But yet, I don't think it really hides the fact that Elio is fairly routine. It's somewhat kind of repetitive stuff. It's one of the things I think that's quite noticeable is it's using these typical metaphors in an attempt to appear more meaningful than it really is. And again, there are some moving moments in it, so don't, I'm not ignoring that part. But there's some other stuff that I just feel like, again, it's just kind of the routine thing without having real, to be really emotionally effective in better ways and in more scenes. But having said that meaningful part that is there does truly show up throughout the film, particularly towards the end. There's a voiceover at the beginning and the end, and it's essentially the same words that is it's about space and are we alone, and the meaning that takes on throughout the movie and at the end is absolutely heartwarming. So Elio is not. It's not top shelf Pixar. I've also, but it certainly is better than the other, especially some of these Pixar sequels like Cars 2 and stuff like that. But there's some other ones. You know them. But what I can say here right now for the year of 2025, when it comes to family enjoyment, family entertainment, Elio does beat Minecraft and Lilo and Stitch. So in one of the things that is said throughout Elio, I shall leave you with, okay, bye, I love you. Vick's Flicks rating for Elio, I give it 3 out of 5. And coming up next, zombies, and flesh-eating zombies. Danny Boyle and Alex Garland are back. The rage virus is back. And full swinging penises are back. And 28 years later. Per Rotten Tomatoes, Academy Award winning director Danny Boyle and Academy Award nominated writer Alex Garland, they've reunited for a terrifying new auteur horror story set in the world created by 28 Days Later. It's been almost 3 decades since the rage virus escaped a biological weapons laboratory, and now, still in a ruthlessly enforced quarantine, some have found ways to exist amidst the infected. One such group of survivors lives on a small island connected to the mainland by a single, heavily defended causeway. When one of the group leaves the island on a mission into the dark heart of the mainland, he discovers secrets, wonders, and horrors that have mutated not only the infected, but other survivors as well. So 28 years later is told essentially in 2 parts. One is there's the son-father. It's more about kind of the hunt of going in there and kind of doing the kill. And it's very much embedded into the kind of the machoism of going out there with your weapon and, a father trying to bring his son into it, and that, is he too young? Is he not ready? Of course he's ready, you fool. I'm going to prove it. And so there's that, and toxic masculinity obviously is in there, which was a big theme in 28 Days Later. And anyway, this first part is basically kind of barbaric and it's violent. And the second part is actually the son and the mother. And in this part, I think this is kind of what surprised me about it, is that it was it's actually rather tender and it's empathetic and it's hopeful and it's about love, but it still has a lot of like blood splattering. So don't worry. It's there. I didn't really expect it to kind of play that way, but I also appreciate it because I think it's a different direction to do, and kind of have the central character who's a young boy, and he's kind of, it really is just about him and his parents, but the fact of where each of the parent is obviously the real kind of turmoil in it, and I'll get into kind of what his parents, where they're kind of at in their own journey here in a minute. But there's also, just in general, 28 years later, there's a lot of paying homage to the 28 Days Later, and it's with its look and its feel, but also amping up the ferociousness. It's still very intense when the horror elements come out and the zombies are out, and especially this one that's the alpha one. I'll get to him in a minute. So Aaron Taylor Johnson plays the dad. I think it's a solid performance from him. He's dealing with his wife's illness while also trying to make his son kind of tough like him. Like I said, he's kind of building his boy into this hero. He calls him the Giant Slayer, and it's I'm not going to spoil anything. It's not quite how his father describes it, and Alfie, the son, does know that. So there's already sort of quite a bit of gaslighting there as far as what really happened on the mainland the first time when him and his dad went out. So Jodie Comer is the mom. She's spectacular. She is her character as the mom. She is sick. She's losing her mind, but I really like that she's not as weak or as fragile as painted in that first half of the film. And so that second half is really focused on her and kind of what she's been through and what she sort of already knows, that kind of leads them back, her and her son, back to the mainland, but for a different reason. She's so sorrowful in this. She's great. She's, like I said, she did a phenomenal job in this. Ray Fiennes, great all day, every day. Plays an oddball doctor whose survival methods are unique, to say the least, and is the sort of architect of the Bone Temple, which certainly comes into play later. His character comes in at the exact moment 28 years later needs him, and his approach to his character, to the doctor, feels perfect. His look, his presence, his words of meaning, all of this expands this world in fascinating ways. There's certainly more to explore about his character, and I'm here for it. Alfie Williams, as I said, plays the boy. He's the anchor of the film. He's kind of the glue that kind of keeps everything together. He's an amazing young actor. I think this is only like his second feature. He's dealing with a variety of emotions as Spike, growing up in this horrifying world, and just the effects of that. And there's some jokes in there where he kind of comes in contact with an older kid later, and he's kind of talking, bringing up a couple things, but because of Alfie's age and how the world has certainly changed, he doesn't know, like, what we all recognize as something and have heard of. He's never seen. He's never even heard of it. So, and then what Alfie is living with at home has only made all of this that much more difficult. Williams impressively holds his own, where it's 28 years later does kind of play like a coming of age story with within this land of the undead. The music is awesome. The music's done by Young Fathers, a Scottish hip hop trio. It's excellent and intense, turning the volume up on the film's horror elements. Anthony Dodd Mantle's cinematography is gorgeous. He actually won an Oscar for Danny Boyle's Slumdog Millionaire. Just amazing of all of the beauty that is captured in a film about some flesh-eating crazies, but gorgeous shots, beautiful cinematography. The technical style of 28 Days Later felt really innovative at the time. And Boyle and Mantle continue to kind of push that forward with this one. This is via Business Insider. Danny Boyle says he filmed 28 years later with iPhones, drones, and a goat. The director, whose 2002 horror classic was shot on digital cameras for a deliberately lo-fi look, was keen to take a similarly unconventional approach with his follow-up 2 decades later. Let me get the goat part out of the way. I think he said that they basically hooked some of these cameras up to certain animals, and one of them was a goat. And just so you know, in here it says, to capture their terrifying encounters with zombies, Boyle told Business Insider he relied on iPhones, drones, and yes, those goats. While Boyle said the goat shot didn't make it into the final cut, the tactic prompted him to try strapping a camera to a new variant of the infected called the slow-lo, which crawls on the ground eating bugs. This shot was cool, and it's one of, like, it's really early on. And having done it with the goats, you then think, oh, Boyle said, that slow-lo shot made it into the film and into the trailer too. I don't remember it being in the trailer, but I definitely remember it being in the film. For the film's pulse-pounding chase scenes, Boyle relied on iPhones and drones instead of heavy, high-tech equipment. The Business Insider piece goes on, any smartphone now can record at 4K, indeed up to 60 frames per second, which is more than enough resolution you need for cinema exhibition. Keeping the crew light on their feet also helped them more easily navigate the wild landscape of Northumberland, the UK region used as filming location for 20 years later. Plus, he says there's an added bonus: shooting on iPhones makes things way, way cheaper. So, with 28 years later, as much as fans of this series love the zombie carnage, it differentiates from this subgenre by always putting that human story first and the zombie one second. Well, hold on. That may not be completely true with 28 Weeks Later. However, Boyle and Garland always find the humanity in the butchery, the persistence of the human spirit. And that's very much present here, as is the stellar atmosphere that they create. I really appreciate the emotional depth that runs deeper in this, with its sole focus, as I said, on Spike and his two parents. Without spoiling anything, the way 28 Years Later concludes is a tad jarring for me. It's a total change up from the rest of the film. I feel like if you kind of cut the opening and ending scenes, I think 28 Years Later would be just fine. I dare say probably even maybe a little better. I think it'd just be an overall stronger film. Even so, it's clear these scenes are there to connect the next film. So knowing that 28 Years Later is the start of a planned trilogy helps with all of this, because there is surely more to be told. But the direction it could be going just feels strange, judging by like those last 5 minutes or so. But I'm choosing to remain cautiously optimistic. As I said, 28 Years Later is kicking off a brand new trilogy, and it may come as a surprise to some of you that are listening to this right now. But before I get into that, I must address the co-stars that are flopping around. Killian showed his penis in 28 Days Later. First of all, side note, I remember seeing that, and now I think that was maybe the first time I'd ever seen Cillian Murphy, and certainly the first time I've ever seen his penis. But I would have sworn to anyone that he was naked for the first 10 minutes of the movie. I specifically thought that there's this great scene where he kind of makes it out into London, and it's clear, nothing's there. I could have sworn he was butt-ass naked airing that, but I'm here to tell you folks something. Cillian Murphy in 28 Days Later is only naked for, I think, maybe a minute. Maybe two. You certainly don't see his goods for more than a few seconds. So I was, just off the bat, when I was rewatching the other two before I went to see this one, I was immensely embarrassed. But oh wait, hold on. Here's the good news. There's an abundance of dicks in 28 Years Later. Don't you worry about just seeing one man's. You see plenty. But there is one specific one that's attached, and I mentioned him earlier, to the alpha zombie. And he has Thor's hammer between his legs. I don't know if it's real. It could be a fake one. I have no idea. This man he's a hoss of a man. So it sort of fits if it's real. And if so, I don't blame the big guy for showing it off. You should. Swing it around. Knock over walls. I think he kills someone with it. I don't know. It's a bit of a blur. But anyways, that's something else to look forward to if you're into that. So back to this new trilogy. So 28 Years Later ends a trilogy and starts a trilogy. This is via Variety. Cillian Murphy won't appear in 28 Years Later trilogy until end of second movie. Danny Boyle hopes his casting gets the third film financed. So Murphy is coming back to the 28 Days Later franchise. And I know there's a part in 28 Years where there is a zombie that sort of looks like him. And people are like, oh my God, that's him. But that is not him. I can tell you that. So he's coming back to the franchise, but his return will have to wait. Variety says in the new interviews that actually the Business Insider interview and with IGN, Danny Boyle said that Murphy, who starred in the original 28 Days Later, does not appear in 28 Years Later, but he will be featured in the ending of the 2026 sequel, The Bone Temple. He's in the second one, Boyle told IGN. I shouldn't give away too much. I'll get killed. But it sounds like he did give away a bit. Boyle and Garland conceived 28 Years Later as the start of a new trilogy, the franchise revival, which stars Aaron Taylor Johnson, Jodie Comer, all of that. They actually filmed it back to back with the follow-up that's called 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple. That one's directed by Nia DaCosta, who directed the new Candyman a couple of years ago. It's a trilogy capper. A trilogy capper remains in development and could be greenlit if 28 Years Later becomes a box office hit. Boyle hopes that incorporating Murphy, who is coming off of a Best Actor Oscar for Oppenheimer, could also help secure financing for the third film. Boyle told Business Insider, all I can say is you have to wait for Killian, but hopefully he will help us get the third film financed. To IGN, he said, although each story in the trilogy completes itself, there's a handover section to the next film as well. And that is, I think, part of why, which I think is the total reason why the 28 Years Later ends the way it does. But he said it's very ambitious. We haven't got the money for the third one yet. It'll depend on how the first one does. But hopefully, if we do okay, they'll give us the go-ahead for the money and for the third one. Everybody's standing by for that, really, including Killian. Boyle also shared with Business Insider that getting Murphy on board for the trilogy helped him get approval to film 28 Years Later with iPhones. You promised them Killian Murphy. That's quite a deflection of any technical concerns. They soon forget. We nakedly use that to get our own way. What better promise could you make? So, if you have seen it, I think you absolutely know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, this is, again, it's not a huge spoiler. It's just kind of making you aware that this is essentially, I feel like it should be like 28 Years Later, Part 1. And then you have 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple, and then whatever the third one is. So, like I said, kind of took me out of it in those last few minutes, but certainly not enough to enjoy and appreciate and welcome back Danny Boyle and Alex Garland to the 28 franchise, shall we say. So I'm giving it a VixFlix rating of 3.5 out of 5. And from what I have seen from the box office, I think we will get that third one. So I'm very intrigued by where this is going to go with 28 Years Later and now The Bone Temple, which is next, which my understanding is of right now, the Nia DaCosta one is direct, I think comes out in January, so we don't have to wait too long. And I think Ray Fiennes is going to be in it more. So it's fascinating on what they've decided to do. Like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic to see kind of where it goes from here. And that's it. That wraps up another volume of these Cinema Chronicles right here on Nashville Movie Dispatch. Again, please be sure catch everything that we have out there on NashvilleMovieDispatch.substack.com. We did a review a couple weeks ago, me and my buddy Brett, on F1, the movie with Brad Pitt. You can go listen to that. That just came out this past weekend, and we got plenty of other things written. You can read them, you can listen to them, do one of them, do both of them, and until next time, just go see a damn movie. Uh-oh.
Step into the world of power, loyalty, and luck.
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
With family, cannolis, and spins mean everything.
Now, you wanna get mixed up in the family business.
Introducing The Godfather at ChumbaCasino.com. Test your luck in the shadowy world of The Godfather slot.
Someday, I will call upon you to do a service for me.
Play The Godfather now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Welcome to the family.